ahead and show what I've got done on the bulb so far. Looks a little frosted now because I've went over the entire surface with 600 grit sandpaper very lightly. I don't want to lose any of my details, so I did the sand very hard. Now back to back, this edge was kind of rough, and it wasn't quite as rounded as I thought it should be, so I kind of reshaped this somewhat, and that's very smooth indeed. Then on the bottom of here, this piece I've smoothed off and rounded these edges just a bit. The other thing I did is I mentioned in the previous video that I wanted to get a piece of brass tubing to put in here. As you can see, there appears to be a piece of brass tubing in there, but in reality that's not brass tubing. It's a piece of 003 brass sheet that I cut because I couldn't find any brass tubing of the exact size. Cut that and found that if I used a Sharpie marker, that the diameter of the Sharpie marker was the correct diameter for this hole. So I basically used the Sharpie marker to help form this, to conform to this hole that I drilled in the previous video. And I also marked the outside of the brass and cut it with some scissors before I put it in. This brass does cut pretty easy with a pair of scissors. Just don't use one you're going to be depending upon to use a lot of for your clothing. But after that was done, even though the scissors did a pretty good job, there was some rough edges. So I got some 220 grit and sanding from the inside out, like so. Sanded the edge down till it was pretty smooth, and once it was actually pretty much to the shape it needed to be, I went back with some 600 grit again and burnished this even more. So now, as you can see, even though this is cut at an angle, it's smooth and it won't cut you. It's no jagged pieces, and I'm thinking about leaving it the brass color inside. I'm not sure yet, because I do want something that's going to carry a lot of light. And even though there is a seam in there, I've looked and you really can't tell where the seam is. Because the other thing I did is once I got the brass shaped with the pen, I took and coated the inside of this with super glue and then inserted the pen into the interior of this sheet, which forced it to the outside walls and kept it there, twisting slowly to make sure that the pen, if it happened to have gotten some super glue on it, which I tried to make sure it didn't happen, would turn where I could get it back out once this had an opportunity to set, and now it's in there solid. It's not going anywhere. Okay, the next piece I want to work on is the bridge area, and again this is made out of another solid piece of resin, so lighting on it means modification. And what I've done is sighting down the side and aligning it with this top line on the bridge area detail. I visually was able to find a mark that was in line with this along this edge. Did the same for this edge using this location, and I made a mark. Then the back of the bridge, of course, has this nice beam running down, so it's very easy to get the center of that. And then I went to the front and basically attempted to align with this one visually and drew a line there. Now that should be the exact center of the bridge area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my drills out and start a pilot hole there, and then come back with a larger bit to enlarge that even more. I'm going to have to be very careful because I do need to drill fairly deep, but I definitely don't want to go and destroy any of this detail with drilling through the top of this. So ideally, if I have a bench press, again, I've got one in my shop, it's just too cold to work out there. I can set this up in a bench press, set the depth gauge, and not have to be worried about that. But now I am going to be worried about it, so I'm just being very careful to make sure I don't drill through that. Okay, to start out with, X marks the dot. Okay, it's got the starter hole made and it's pretty close to center. And I'm going to go up to a much larger bit, because what I'm attempting to do is by drilling through that, all right, now moving on. Worked on the sensor dome a bit, and what I did is basically I drilled a hole down through there. First I measured the height of this to see how deep I could go, and then once I knew what this height was, I just took a piece of masking tape, put it around from the very tip top of my drill bit, that far down the drill bit. So if this was a drill bit, from the very tip top down to this point, let's say, and just wrapped tape around that to act as a visual guide to when I was getting close to the correct depths, because I didn't want to drill through the structure up here and lose any of this detail. So I drilled that out, and then after I did that, I went back in with some small drill bits and opened these holes up in the rear and these holes up in the front. Now they're not perfectly shaped. I don't know if you can see, there we go, this detail or not. Hopefully you can. They're not perfectly shaped, but that's fine, because I do plan on making my own piece of photo etch to wrap around the bridge in this area, and will basically fit and square up these holes where they need to be, and then only let what needs to shine through. But right now these holes are open. I can get my finger completely up in there. So these holes are open, and if I had a light source, you would be able to see that light will go through those with no problem. They are opened up. And the next problem piece was this piece. And how it works is you have this piece, and then you've got a row of windows, and then you have another detail piece and another row of windows. Well, what I decided to do, as you can see, there's a quite a gap there now between those two pieces. Okay, what I decided to do, I measured or I marked from the piece that was here. I went to my bandsaw and got some acrylic and made a piece of acrylic window. Right now this is, and I've cut this off. It's still a little high in spots, so I'm going to have to grind it down a bit more. But what's going to happen is I'm going to have this piece with a piece of acrylic window. I then went and trimmed this piece off, the detail piece off, and I'm going to have another piece of acrylic window. So I will have the detail, acrylic window, detail, acrylic window sandwich. And then when I put it all back together and glue it in place, of course you can tell what I'm going for here. By having the piece of acrylic in there, I'm going to be able to mask and light this fairly easily. And to me, this was a simpler solution than trying to drill 50 or 60 windows out and hope that I got them right. So I don't know if you can see that wafer or not now, but anyway, that's basically what it's going to look like. Going to have to, of course, detail these acrylic pieces a bit smoother and get the excess resin, because I actually did this on a bandsaw. The blade was a bit smaller than that, which was a good thing because I then had plenty of room on both sides to cut, which the only downside is now I'm going to have to take, and that's what I've started doing, went with my file first on this edge and started to file away this excess material. Okay, as you can see, it's kind of slow go, but I'm going to keep at it, try to keep my file clean. That's a key piece. And until I get this basically smooth. Once I get it close, I'm going to go up with this piece of sandpaper, bring it to the edge of the table to where I can have it lay it flat, and then flat sand the remainder of that until it's perfectly smooth. Then, of course, I'm going to have to go back to this piece, and where it has excess resin also, you can tell it's a little thick on this end. Going to have to do the same thing, get with the file down the excess, get it good and level, and then this is my detail piece that will go between the two pieces of acrylic, making that sandwich. But like I said, since it's not a clear piece altogether, I prefer doing this rather than trying to go in and drill a lot of holes to light up all those windows. So that's where I'm at now. I'm hoping the next update I'll be able to be in a better position to show you what this is going to look like lit up, at least in the mock-up stage. Of course, I've drilled a hole here to pass the wiring in from the bulb, which will be attached to the neck, and then this headpiece up here with my lighting coming through here and through the sensor dome on the top. That's where I'm at the moment, so I will try to get this one finished up, uploaded, and like I said, the next time I would come back and at least have a mock-up of what this is going to look like lit. Thanks.